256 BC, the Mediterranean off Sicily. A bronze ram punches through a wooden hole and 300 men spill into water already red with blood. Flames spread across a deck packed with rowers who have nowhere to run. Warriors charge across boarding bridges, swords drawn, shields locked. This is the Battle of Cape Ecnomus. Nearly 700 warships and over 290,000 men. It's one of the largest naval battles in human history. But let's change one thing. Sitting 5 miles off the Roman flank, untouched by the chaos, is something no one understands. A 100,000-ton Gerald R. Ford class nuclear supercarrier from 2025. Dropped into a battle it was never designed to fight. Last time, we dropped a single destroyer into the middle of the Roman formation, and it wasn't quite enough to change history. This time, we're back with a carrier and seeking vengeance. So what happens when the most advanced warship on Earth is unleashed during one of antiquity's greatest naval clashes? Can it shut down Rome's invasion of Africa before a single legionnaire sets foot on the beach? Or is it just one floating airfield against an empire of 330 warships and 140,000 men? Let's talk about what just showed up. The Gerald R. Ford stretches 1,106 feet, longer than 3 football fields. Its flight deck spans 256 feet across. 2 nuclear reactors drive 4 shafts, pushing this floating city to speeds above 30 knots. It carries a crew of nearly 4,600 and an air wing of over 65 aircraft. FA-18 Super Hornets, E-2 Hawkeye early warning planes, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare jets, and a squadron of helicopters. Its electromagnetic catapults can hurl a fully loaded fighter off the deck every few minutes. For defense, it carries evolved Sea Sparrow missiles, rolling airframe missiles, and phalanx close-in weapon systems that spit tungsten at 4,500 rounds per minute. This isn't a warship, it's a mobile air base with its own defensive perimeter. The destroyer had to get close. The carrier never does. But here's the catch that keeps this interesting. The carrier's most precise weapons, JDAMs, GPS-guided bombs, rely on satellite navigation that doesn't exist in 256 BC. Without GPS, those bombs lose their pinpoint accuracy. Pilots can still drop unguided ordnance and strafe with cannons, but they're doing it visually, picking targets out of a sea filled with hundreds of nearly identical wooden ships packed so close together they almost touch. Friendly fire isn't a concern here, since Rome is the only fleet, but target priority is. Which ships are transports? Which carry the consoles? Which are just empty escorts? From 15,000 feet, a quinquereme looks like every other quinquereme, and there are over 330 of them. Now, let's look at what's rowing toward Africa. Rome's fleet at Cape Ecnomus is arranged in a massive wedge. The consoles, Regalis and Vulso, command from flagship galleys at the tip. Behind them, 2 columns of warships trail back in a V shape. A third squadron forms a horizontal baseline behind those columns, towing the horse transports. The whole reason this fleet exists. And behind everything, a 4th line of heavy warships acts as a rear guard. Every ship carries 300 rowers and 120 marines armed with swords, javelins, and boarding bridges. The Corvus, a hinged gangplank with an iron spike, slams down onto enemy decks and locks ships together so legionnaires can storm across. Rome doesn't try to outsail you, it grabs you and kills you with infantry. That doctrine won't work against something 5 miles away and 15,000 feet up. But Rome doesn't need to sink the carrier, it just needs enough ships to survive the crossing, and that's where this gets complicated. The carrier's first move is information. An E-2 Hawkeye launches and climbs altitude. Its radar paints every ship in the Roman formation from dozens of miles away. The carrier now has something no ancient commander ever had: a complete real-time picture of the entire battlefield. Every galley, every transport, every gap in the formation. Strike packages begin launching. Super Hornets loaded with unguided bombs and 20mm cannons scream off the flight deck and bank toward the Roman wedge. The first targets are the transport cluster at the center of the formation. Kill the transports, kill the invasion. That's the mission. The first bombs hit and the effect on wooden warships is absolute. A 500-pound bomb doesn't just sink a quinquereme, it erases it. Timber, men, oars, all of it turned into shrapnel and spray in an instant. Fires erupt across pitch-sealed decks. The concussion alone capsizes nearby galleys. Roman sailors who survive the blast surface in water thick with burning wreckage. But here's where the carrier's real limitation emerges: sortie generation. The Ford class was designed to sustain 160 sorties in a 12-hour flight day. That sounds overwhelming, but each sortie cycle takes time. Launch, fly to target, engage, return, land, refuel, rearm, inspect. Against a modern enemy, you're hitting a handful of high-value targets per sortie. Against 330 individual wooden ships spread across miles of ocean, you're playing the most expensive game of whack-a-mole in military history. Each fighter can only carry so many bombs, each pass only sinks a handful of galleys, and while one group of pilots is cycling back to the deck, the Roman fleet keeps rowing, and the Romans adapt. They don't understand what's happening, but they understand enough. Ships are dying in fire from above, so Roman captains start doing what Roman captains do best. They push forward. The formation fragments deliberately. Ships scatter in every direction, some hugging the Sicilian coastline where shallow water and rocky shoals make attack runs dangerous. Others sprint south in loose clusters, spreading the carrier's targeting problem across miles of open sea. The tightly packed wedge that made such a perfect target dissolves into dozens of smaller groups, each one harder to find and prioritize than the last. Some captains lash transports between warships for cover. Others beach their galleys temporarily, wait for the metal birds to pass, then push back out. Rome doesn't need every ship to survive. It needs enough. And the carrier is burning through resources. Aviation fuel is finite. The fort arrived with its tanks full, but without military sealift command oilers waiting over the horizon, every sortie drains a reservoir that cannot be refilled. Bombs and cannon rounds are the same story. Every weapon expended is gone forever. The carrier can generate enormous violence, but it can't generate it indefinitely. As the hours pass, the math starts to shift. The carrier has savaged the Roman center. Dozens of transports are burning or sunk. The consular flagships are gone, shattered by direct hits that decapitated the fleet's command structure. The wedge formation is unrecognizable. Fires dot the sea from horizon to horizon. But the flanks survived. Roman warships that scattered east along the coast are regrouping in shallow water where pilots can't safely engage. A cluster of transports that broke south during the initial chaos is still making headway toward Africa, escorted by warships whose captains decided that forward was safer than staying. Night is approaching, and the carrier's ability to identify and strike individual wooden ships in darkness drops dramatically. The most likely outcome is a brutal, partial victory. The carrier breaks the Roman fleet as an organized fighting force. The invasion plan is shattered in its original form. The massed crossing, the full army landing, the coordinated campaign Regulus envisioned, all of it gone. But Rome doesn't lose everything. Scattered groups of transports, maybe 40 or 50 ships out of the original convoy, reach the African coast over the following days in disorganized clusters. Enough men land to establish a beachhead, but not enough to sustain a real campaign. What was supposed to be an invasion becomes a desperate raid. And the carrier, it dominates the sea for as long as its fuel lasts. Weeks, maybe a month of reduced operations. But with no port, no resupply, and no way to replace expended weapons, it becomes the most powerful monument in the ancient world. A steel island crewed by thousands of sailors who've just won a battle they can never win again. Roman fishermen will talk about the Iron Island for generations. Senators will argue about whether it was divine punishment or a weapon of Carthage. And somewhere in the harbor that won't be built for 2,000 years, the most advanced warship ever constructed sits in silence, out of bombs, out of fuel, and out of time. One ship changed the battle, but even a supercarrier can't change an empire. Or what do you think would happen? And if you haven't seen the first part of this video, check out what happens when a modern destroyer fights the entire Roman Empire by clicking the video on screen now. Thanks for watching.